Good afternoon to our audience both on Zoom and on the live stream. Welcome to the Pecha Kucha webinar organized by the Pakistan Institute of Interior Designers. Before we begin, a few housekeeping announcements. For those joining us on Zoom, please mute your microphone so that we have minimal disturbance, and save your questions for after the session or share them on the chat box. We will address them during the Q&A portion. Good afternoon to our audience both on Zoom and on the Please note that any rude or inappropriate behavior in the Zoom will not be tolerated and will lead to you being removed. Those watching us on YouTube, please share your questions in the live chat, and a member of our team will share them with the panelists. I will now hand over the conversation to Raza Zahid.
Salam, everyone. My name is Raza Zahid, and I'm an architect and interior plus product designer based in Lahore, and also the Associate Professor of Architecture at the Beacon House National University. I'm going to be moderating the first in a series of webinars hosted by the Pakistan Institute of Interior Designers, titled The Intersection of Arts and Crafts in Interior Design. I'd like to begin by introducing the illustrious panelists with us today, and I am going to do so with the ones furthest away and work my way back to my hometown, Lahore. So from across the border in Mumbai, India, we are joined by Jayashree, Darda, Bhalla, and Bhalla. They're both graduates of the Sir J.J. School of Architecture, followed by a master's degree from the University of Illinois. They're also founders and principal architects of Search, an architectural studio that was set up in 1990, which over the past 3 decades has produced an extensive body of work, many of which has been award-winning, spanning across multiple scales from master planning to interior design. The design ideology of the office has a strong focus on sustainability and a reputation of exceptional innovative design. Jayashree is also a nationally acclaimed landscape architect and is the recipient of a number of landscape design awards. From Karachi, we are joined by Naheed Mashooqullah, also a graduate of the J.J. School of Architecture and a master's in interior design from the Kelly Hoppen Design School in London. Naheed worked with architect Yasmin Lari in Arcop before setting up Naheed Mashooqullah Studio for Architecture, which is well known for many award-winning architectural and interior design works in both the residential and commercial sectors. Next to her, we have Samir Sadrudin, who obtained his bachelor's in environmental studies, as well as a master's in architecture from the University of Manitoba. Samir has been working with the Aga Khan University for the past 13 years and is currently the Director of Design and Engineering. Prior to this, he's also worked with large architectural firms in the US and Canada on projects situated in the Middle East, Africa, and China. Also from Karachi, we have Maria Aslam, who got her bachelor's from the Indus Valley School and a master's degree from McGill University. Maria is founder and director of Archworks, as well as the founder and editor-in-chief of the ADA magazine. She is a prolific writer, architectural historian, and environmental activist, working in the fields of interior design, architecture, and heritage conservation, and is the chairperson of the Pakistan Institute of Interior Designers. Last but not least, from Lahore, we have Rashid Rashid, a graduate of the National College of Arts, who along with Saad Mahmood Khan is the partner and co-founder of SR Design Works, a multidisciplinary award-winning studio set up in 2006. The office has built an impressive body of work in a relatively short span and specialize in architecture, interior, and product designs, again with an emphasis on sustainability. Rashid is also the co-founder and director of the Pakistan Green Building. So firstly, thank you to all the panelists for joining us today for what I'm sure is going to be an informative discussion on the selected topic. As mentioned before, to all those who are watching us on Zoom and YouTube, please do send us your questions, and we'll try and address as many as possible in the question and answer session at the end. Maria, would you like to say a few words about the role and vision of the PIID before we begin?
Assalamu alaikum, a very good evening, a very rainy evening, in fact, to all of us. I believe we are sharing a downpour in various parts of the world as we speak to each other. And namaste to both of you, Jayashree and Kapil. Very, very warm welcome. PIID is honored to have you all on board. And I look forward to a great evening ahead. A very fun-filled evening. I can see all the smiles from Naheed and Samir already. As mentioned, we are a body which is a decade old, but we are still emerging, very vibrant, and trying to focus on the profession and the professional simultaneously. I'm sorry, we also have thunder at our backdrop, which I cannot control at all. So you'll have to bear with us, and some technical glitches which might come in because of the rain. So, I will just open up the session with a warm welcome and then participate in the conversation as we move ahead. So back to you, Raza.
Thank you, Maria. As a starting point, I think it'll be very useful for our audience to hear a few words from our panelists, all of whom happen to be formally trained as architects, about the design ethos of their practices, especially with reference to interior design. Can I ask Jayashree and Kapil to take the lead on this?
So with specific reference to the whole entire art and craft movement and the way the arts and crafts have impacted the way that we design, I can say it's inherently there, in our DNA. It's just the way that we have been juxtaposed in this scenario that while growing up, even if it's art school or architecture school, we have been always taking inspiration from it. But currently it is at such a, I would say dangerous crossroad that it is becoming harder and harder to kind of stay within that focus and that goal that we were, that was inculcated with us, and so I hope to take back from this discussion some strength towards continuing in that area. And I'm sure you all agree, with the technology that is taking over and the complete multiplicity of things that are happening, decision-making towards protecting the arts and crafts is getting to be challenging. So I really would love to, take that forward within this. But coming to our, practice over the last few years, it's always been about sustainable design. It's about searching, looking for answers, and we argue a lot, discuss a lot, and it's only when we agree on one plan that that plan goes forward. So often our clients have told us, that we are paying for one architect and actually getting the services of two. So that's always been our goal, to really layer all the questions and then kind of focus in on the solution.
I also think that we've all been, I feel we've been given birth by an artist, and our heritage has around us has a very high influence of art. Our workers and their ancestry have been artisans. We cannot ignore it. We are amongst it. We are in the midst of it. This whole Asian region is very strong, with such impressions. And it plays a very important role when we get down to interior design, which in itself is an art form. So I think that there is no line that divides or separates one from the other. And I think that's what we have always followed. So just to expand on what Jayashree's been saying, so being a landscape architect, there's a lot that happens in design. There's art, there's open space, there's a built form. And I think all of it plays a very important role in the initial conceptual thought process. And that's how we've looked at it. So really, at least personally, I'm not able to understand where I can draw a line and separate one from the other, because the inspiration is so great. And on a daily basis, we're working with artisans who may not have the kind of education we do, but they're so skilled and so sensible, and has come down from the ages. And we are lucky, all of us on this screen are lucky to have been born in this region where there's such a strong influence of art at all the time, all around us.
Thank you. I'd like to ask, when you're working in a large cosmopolitan city like Mumbai, that I'm sure is very diverse and has multiple narratives, what sort of influences and references do you look at when you're trying to contextualize an interior space?
So primarily it starts with just understanding the client and what kind of needs he or she or the family has. So yeah, that's the starting point. And of course, it usually takes two crazy people to make a nice space, So it's we look for that differentiating craziness that is really this, the picking point to go ahead and do it. The inspiration comes from the site itself, the views or the location. And, even though Mumbai is this very populated kind of city, if you look at it from a window perspective, you always see a different viewpoint. So I just find that very interesting. It's like you're sitting on a perch, and every site that we are doing has something different that you look out of, and that I usually take my inspiration from that. It's usually like a huge tree, or it's a sea, or it's like there are many, many, viewpoints. And I think part of the reason for that viewpoint is that it's not a gridded city. It's very organic. And so there are many layers of, inspiration that happen, and most of them happen from within the site itself.
Yeah, I think so. I think what Jayashree said is correct. Bombay particularly, and when I, for instance, look at Karachi and I take a kind of a drone shot of Karachi from the top, Bombay is full of spiraling buildings. So generally speaking, I think interior design has been very extroverted. It deals with a lot with what you look at outside, and there's a lot to look at outside, and there are many layers, like she's rightly saying, many different directions in which you could see, because it's an island city. And I think that plays a very large role, because the kind of natural light you get and the views that you get are so integral to how you deal with the space that you're going to use inside, whether it's residential or it's an office space, a workspace, or whatever it may be. So yeah, maybe unlike other cities where you're on a lower scale, where you're looking under the treetop levels, and it's a very different approach. That opportunity is not common in a city like Bombay, which has its own beauty.
Right. Thank you. I'd like to move on to Samir and Naheed. If both of you could say a few words about your respective practices.
So I started my practice almost, I think 26 years ago. And when I started, it was a really small practice, and just me and two other people. It's grown since then. And very organically, I haven't been a very ambitious person. So whatever growth has come, it's just been a very, very natural one. As far as the topic today is concerned, interiors and architecture and arts and crafts, I do feel like Jayashree, it is in our DNA. That is very much there. When the topic first was told to me, I thought, I almost told Maria, I'm not the correct person for it, because I've always considered myself, or I feel I'm an aspiring minimalist. And I like to think that I rely more on form than application. So I said to myself, no, this, it doesn't seem something that I can relate to, because I like to keep my projects as less as possible. But then, when I thought about it, and I looked back at the projects I've done, I saw an abundance of arts and crafts that I had personally used and enjoyed using. And then I realized that using arts and crafts really is not cognitive at all. I mean, the whole process is that of intuition. And through that very, a space of absolute feeling, it just comes naturally, it just flows. And I think when I look back now, perhaps over the years, I've become a little less obvious about it. My detailing or the arts and crafts I do end up using is a little bit more evolved, maybe a little contemporary, but it is arts and crafts nevertheless. I used to use it a little bit more in a traditional way before, perhaps, but I feel this is a journey, and like we all change with time. This is something that I like to feel that I'm growing into different styles and different kind of quantities that I use of the craft, and also the different types, and how I evolve that into letting it be a part of who I am today. I think that's how I feel about it.
I agree. I agree with everybody. That's, art and craft is so much a part of our culture. It's a part of our heritage and tradition that even subconsciously it sneaks its way into our work. It's just a normal thing. It's everywhere. I know when I moved to Pakistan after many, many years, and I got a domestic to help me around the house, we developed a good relationship, and he went off to his mulk and came back with a bed sheet for me, and it was embroidered with red flowers all over the place. And my first reaction was, oh my God, am I going to be able to sleep on this? and then he came up to me and he said, you sleep on white sheets? Where's the art in that? Where is the tradition? Where's the craft in it? He said, you have to sleep on this thing. And it was a real pleasure. It was a real treat to have that kind of gesture made. And it really made you think that the work you do it's there everywhere. And the Al Khan University that I work for is a classic example. I mean, it's very minimal. It's a hospital, it's a university. So it's an institution that is made up of very few materials. The palette is very, very limited. But nevertheless, even within that, there is a hint of art. And maybe later in the chat, I'll show you how we have been able to achieve some of these things, how the craft has been used, it's been updated, it's been modernized, and it's been, it's still alive. So I think that whether we like it or not, it's here with us, in us, So.
Thank you for that. Rashid Saab, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum. For me, I think I trained at the National College of Arts, and I was lucky that at that time there were a lot of old masters or ustads, as we could sort of call them. They were alive, and I was lucky that one of our teachers was Nasir Mahmood. I would like to mention him. Took me in as an internee, and then later I was a partner in the same firm. So I was working on live sites at a very early stage, like as early as second year. So I learned to build very quickly. So by the time I graduated, I pretty much knew a lot. But what I like to do personally was I paint also, sometimes sculpt, and I like old things. So I collect pianos and old Moradabadi plates, and old streamer chests and chairs. Especially I collect chairs. So I restore them, sometimes try to sort of work them myself, at least take the old polish off and all that, mostly for their proportions, right? And I just think that those people who created them, they weren't properly literate, but there was a tradition of father to son or ustad to student relationship that transferred that knowledge. So I'm looking for that knowledge that comes from arts and crafts, and also because I'm interested in concrete and ceramics and woodwork. So personally, I work with a lot of these older craftspeople and then some younger ones also. So later, maybe I'll be able to share some photographs. But because like Kapil said, that we are born into this. And I also think that we are one of the few regions in the world, maybe Italy is one, and India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, that people still work with their hands. You can still have somebody say, can you do this? And say, ji sir, bilkul ho jayega. So people from, you can make customized carpets, you can customize fabric, you can. So my journey, I think, is now for the last 5-6 years based on the realization that we have some things ingrained in us naturally, how we have been trained. But also if you seek craftspeople, to me, craftspeople, men and women both, are like teachers. So we work with them, we work with their children, we try to convince them that they need to stick to their family business. And we know that younger people get bored easily, so you try to get some mechanization or optimization into their system so they stay. Our takeaway from this is that these are the same older people who train our architects. So working with those old masters, our people get trained. They wouldn't get trained just by looking at images and looking at drawings. So by collecting things, by restoring things, by trying to get some knowledge of what our cultural relevance is also. I haven't been able to figure out what it is, but when I travel, extensively travel within the country, I try to pick what is originally ours. It's not from 100 years, not from 200 years, but like in the recent history, what is it that our grassroots people make with their own hands and still do. So, and we then try to incorporate it in our projects. What I've also started doing is that for a lot of interiors, I try and source older things and put them in the interiors with the catch that if this shop or this store ever closes, I'll buy this from them, because then they get preserved also. So multiple things happening at the same time, but a more accelerated learning process and an easier conversion, because people are also understanding that there has to be a fusion between what we get as influences from the West and what our own core is. I think it's coming home in a way.
Thank you, Rashid. Do you find that there are any kind of challenges or hurdles when one is applying arts and crafts in interiors? Is it to do with client demands or timelines or sourcing quality?
Yes, timelines definitely, because especially for commercial projects, as soon as their meter starts, they've paid their advances, they want a quick job of this. We've struggled. My theory is that after the first 3 stores, the client kind of thinks that they know it themselves, and the 4th one doesn't come through. But we have figured out a formula where we have turned these handcrafted things into not like a manual, but in specialized drawings that any newer craftsperson can make those with obviously varied degrees of quality. It could be 20% less, 20%, 30% more in terms of finish. But yes, if we have to incorporate craftspeople, you have to ensure that you tier them. So the best level, the second best, and then juggle them where they can fit in, but constantly give them work. Because I think with every craft-oriented company or a small business, they die if you don't give them work. So what we do is that if we distribute it between commercial and residential, so 20% commercial, 80% residential, they keep on getting their slow-paced residential work. But because they are mechanized and we have done some R&D with them, when it comes to corporate or commercial, they're able to deliver the same quality. So we encourage them, if it's a wood workshop, to have their own metal or casting or metal fabrication and their lacquering and paint shops within, so they are not dependent on other people. That's also a loss, that somebody did something really nice and another person came and ruined it for them. And that's, yes, but it's always a struggle also with budgets because handcrafted or good quality, unless you are putting engineering and efficiency in it, they won't be able to compete with the larger manufacturers, definitely.
I would like to say one thing here, if you allow, Raza. You know, beyond just core artisans and the craftsmen that we have, and to encourage what they've been doing traditionally, what we have also been doing for quite a few years, for maybe over a couple of decades, is to commission a lot of art. So we have very creative art directors, young people, some of them quite famous in the city of Bombay and in India, who then choreograph customized and art. I'll give you one example, like for a hospitality project. And hospitality is a good palette. It's a good kind of a medium to express a lot of art. And where he went out to Bengal, which is in East India, and bought a lot of local fabrics, which could include saris, pieces of cloth, mirror work, printed stuff, and things like that. And brought, I think, around 7 or 8 suitcase loads of fabric back to Bombay. And then we engaged around 30 local lady tailors. And they were given bunches of, he then coordinated it. As in, let's say if we had a 1 meter by 1 meter palette and we needed 200 pieces of something, like let's say for a corridor in a hotel, and we then had them stitched together and then framed together. So that whole process was very encouraging to even the artisan and the artists. And like that, there have been many modern interpretations of traditional art, borrowing from what you get, which is very traditional, and using new thoughts to put it together. I think the whole process has been very exciting. So just to answer your initial question, that how important is art, is just very exciting. And you know, with so many people who are very encouraging in putting and encouraging even all the traditional artisans in modern methodologies of how to express art in public spaces, I think it has played a very important role in our lives, professional lives. In addition to looking like what Rashid was saying, to identify proportion and scale in pieces of art that you go out and look. I think it's fantastic. I can already see little bits and pieces in his home, you know, behind him, which tell me the kind of personality that he is. So I think it's very expressive. And I think it's overall an extremely exciting experience, and lends a great flavor and flair, you know, beyond just machining furniture and stuff like that. And you know, the kind of regular engineering that we do to make our interior fit out work completed.
Right, thank you. I think one of the integral things for me in arts and crafts is the wisdom that the artisan and the craftsman brings to the table. And I think that's what we've been talking about, which has to do with heritage, which has to do with sort of skills that have been passed on from generation to generation. And it's kind of focused in on this idea of something that is made by hand. And it reminds me of a quotation by the art critic John Ruskin, who talks about how material is in the absence of human labor worthless. So the question that I would like to pose to the panel is, what value do you think an artisan or a craftsman is adding to a material or an interior that perhaps is devoid in the machine made and the mechanical? And this is an open question to the panel.
I would also like to add a few words onto the question that you have posed, Raza. I mean, since we do agree, all of us, that the arts and crafts that we are talking about are part of our history, are part of our heritage, and are inherently identity markers, especially from the region that we come in, which is so very rich, you know, in its various nuances, and has been, I mean, is a marker that is actually reinforced in the Western world. So what about the craftsmanship or the artistic works or the skilled artisans that we are so fast losing? How, I mean, I would like to add it to his question, how we as interior designers, can we bring them back, say not if in the mainstream, but as to highlight them as to their value of what they impose on our cultures and on the globalization spectrum that we are you know, right now sitting in. So I will just add that to his question as well before you all open it up to the panel, please.
So I'm going to say something here first, you know, and this is kind of a controversial statement, but art and craftsmanship evolves. We cannot stop that evolution, okay? What used to happen 1,000 years ago has stopped happening a long time ago. But what has happened is new craft has come out of it. It has inspired new ways of doing certain things. You know, I'm highly inspired by the Japanese culture, for example. They have a minimalist tradition that started way, way back when. And it has evolved. When somebody sees a brand new building in Japan right now, they cannot make that connection. I think the connection in terms of the art and the craft is very philosophical, but it is there as the art has evolved. For someone who does wood carving, for example, you know, wood carving is an art that, again, now machines can do it. There are lasers, there's water jet, there's all kinds of things that have come in to make that easier and more affordable. But I think that the trick is to try and keep evolving it and promoting the evolution of these crafts without hindering them and saying, nahi, वो बांधनी की साड़ी जिसमें 5 लोग बैठ के 5 सालों के लिए एक एक टुकड़ा उठा के उन्होंने डाई किया, वैसा ही होना चाहिए. We are out of it. We are out of the running altogether. So I think we need to accept that art and craft has to evolve. It has evolved, whether we like it or not. But how do we nurture its evolution so that the essence remains today as it did maybe 1,000 years ago? This is something I just wanted to say.
Yeah, I agree with Samir there. I think we can't stop change, and the extremely very, very traditional arts and crafts, they will always hold their own, but it may not be applicable in modern day interiors. So I think instead of letting them die a natural death, it would be a great idea if the authenticity of the art is preserved and it just takes on a little bit of a form which is more acceptable in today's day and age. I know I too will anger some purists over here, but I agree, you can't stop change really. And with regards to Raza's question, what the artists do get in, I think the word that comes to mind is imperfection. We have all these 3D machines and carving tools, but what they do is give us perfect stuff, right? And sometimes we don't want that. We are not perfect as humans. I read somewhere a story of how they kind of took a face, a human face, and how they tried to make it completely symmetrical. So they replicated the right side of the face with the left side, and the person looked a whole lot uglier, you know. So what I feel is nature is not perfect. We are not perfect. So why do we want that perfection? I think the artisan brings that quality of himself, his personality, his soul into the work. And that can never be replicated, never. And that imperfection is what really makes it perfect.
You would need to unmute Jayashree.
Sorry, I'm the technician here.
Okay, so yes, the most puzzling moment for me is when a client says, you know, now you can do these fly-throughs and zoom-throughs through our site, so why didn't you make it? And then we go into the studio and make that fly-through, and I'm convincing myself all the time that this is not going to work. However accurate that fly-through is, it's not going to be the experience that that I am trying to tell. And the reason is that I love the unpredictable nature of my collaborative journeys, you know, with the artists and craftsmen. I want them to put in their work towards the story that is being told. So I love the feeling of not knowing what the art piece is going to be like. And here I have, you know, a client who wants to know exactly what it's going to look like after it's finished. So, so the evolution comes in there, because there are many, you know, points of view that go in through to that piece which is being made along the way, that's to go into a space. So yeah, I mean, I think that evolution is happening, you know, with every project. We kind of challenge ourselves, and even the artists, they don't want to do the same thing they've done the last time. They're happy to, you know, they're happier to do something more creative, more challenging for the space.
So I also agree completely with what Samir was saying. Our son, who is an architect too, took me for a 10-day trip to Japan, my first trip, just the two of us. And he had been there for a month, maybe a year before that. And it is so true that such strong tradition and such a deep philosophy, the country of Japan, and you see in what avatar it is today, from the impressionist perspective, in their 200 and 300-year-old ryokans, how are they treated in 2019 and 2018 is when I went into 2018. The entire interpretation of their culture in modern times, you rightly say, Samir, has it has evolved, but we can recognize it, but in a very different avatar, which also I like. You know, I like the old handrails and the woodwork that they used to do, and the roofing systems and the little intricate detail. I also like their extreme minimalistic approach to treating the same space and the same maybe social experience, for that matter, if you would call it. They have old sulfur springs and towns which are just filled with baths, and you know, this whole juxtapositioning of a very contemporary interpretation of an art form that is from centuries ago. I think it's extremely exciting. And also when they clean or they rake the sand in their courtyards, and they will clean it, and like our son showed me that, see, now it's really clean. And then the same person who cleans the leaves and brings some leaves back and throws them back into that clean courtyard, because that's the way it's meant to be. It's never perfect. So I think that's very true what both the ladies have been saying till now, and Samir.
I think when we're talking about sort of an evolution of the idea of arts and crafts, and how technology like 3D printer and laser cutting, etc., if this is almost kind of taking over, the question really is, is this going to mean the end of arts and crafts? How do we allow arts and crafts to evolve, where the artisans and the craftsmen are still an integral part of the sort of designing of space?
I would like to answer that to whatever extent I can. So again, I bring the example of our son who's currently in New York City, works with very advanced softwares. All right. And we had this discussion some time ago that I think the most evolved, if you may call, think tank or a computer is the human mind. I think that in order to express complex ideas, there is technology. And I don't think, I'm not sure, but this is the big discussion, and maybe Samir and Rashid can throw some light on it. But I did have this debate. The debate hasn't ended yet. It's still midway, where I'm told that technology would help you think of things that you are not able to otherwise conceive. Whereas I, to the contrary, can think that the human mind is very strong and powerful, and that technology could express the human thought. But there are two schools of thought in that. That maybe we can discuss in a different forum. But I think technology does play a very important role. I have personally worked with factories who traditionally have been artisans, and the machinery has helped them produce their work. I mean, it's just been fantastic. I think technology has just improved their expression of how things are done. I don't think that it has not made their minds or their artistic ideologies fade away. That's my personal opinion.
Rashid, would you like to add a few words to this?
Yes, please. So I think because I observe a lot of things that change, especially, how China has changed a lot of things now for people like Japan did many decades ago. So when I would say for Pakistan, that it not really opened up to a lot of foreign visitors in the last couple of decades, since things have been topsy-turvy. But in the last year, a lot of people from Italy and Germany and Eastern Europe started to come here. And I keep on asking questions that, what's your edge if you can't manufacture the way you used to? Because I think what we also should sort of maybe be proud of and kind of be sad about is that our region has never been really stable. So either is conquered by somebody else, or somebody from Afghanistan or Central Asia or the British or whatever. So they've brought in their crafts and their tradition and whatever, but we even have much stability like maybe the way Italy had, and look at their crafts tradition in whatever the way they do it. And I think it's a guild system. It still works here, guilds, but they're mostly involved in determining daily wages and all that, and some system exists. So what I think is that it has to do with consumption. It has to do with the fact that can crafts or handcrafted, or like Samir said, it doesn't need to be really handcrafted. It could be something else with that feel. But can it be available to everybody else, or is it going to be available to exclusive people? Secondly, I would like to ask you that, do you think that tourism plays a major role in how crafts evolve or stay? Because I think wherever tourism is more, some longevity in terms of what you have remains. However, there could be many offshoots and variations, but to keep crafts alive, you have to keep the building industry. I think they get consumed in the hotel industry or specialized, especially boutique hotels, or if you do start doing things like in the north or the south, where you can take that craft and employ a lot of people in those structures. So that is one way of keeping it alive, but these also are economically driven or politically driven or geographically driven. That would that happen for our region, or because I see a pattern of a very fast life or very fast food intake and very quick consumption.
I think it must be the thunderstorm. Oh, he's back. No, he's back.
Yeah.
So are we back? So I think that we are not. हमारे अंदर ठहराव नहीं आ रहा, हमारे अंदर जल्दी जल्दी आ रही है. And crafts is about taking your time. It doesn't have to be all the time in the world, but feel it, touch it, create a variation. It might be a slight variation, or do a better job than your teacher. You know, in the end, if it's learned this way, whether it's architecture or interior design, that can you learn for a long time from your teacher, and can you take it a notch or two notches up? So it's a whole dynamic in because I sit on couple of board of studies and I look at the curriculum within the architecture schools. Maybe 40 to 50% of the things are redundant, and the knowledge of restoration or conservation or cultural relevance or building with materials is not there. It used to be there when we were at NCA. Maybe it was there when you were at JJ. There were wood workshops and metal workshops, and you could learn how things are put together. Now you have to count on your old senior craft people to actually part with that knowledge to your people, because there is no book for it. It has to be felt, and it's through a relationship. So I know in a larger economy, how does that fit in? Maybe I'm not making sense.
So we do discuss the intangible heritage of our surroundings, wherein you are trying to pull in the arts and crafts in the hospitality industry. I understand that. But I would also like to open up the discourse on, do we consciously try to integrate arts and crafts in our projects, be it contemporaries? I'm not saying that we are aping what has been done centuries ago or whatever, but are we consciously trying whether a contemporarized version or a more enhanced version or evolved version of the modern times, or we are just allowing some of the aspects of crafts which are dying as we speak, as we discussed today. I mean, it could be tile making, it could be the pigmentation of colors, the way it was done. Or since we are we as designers have the responsibility or the methodology to actually help propagate your arts and crafts. So I would like to open the forum onto this discussion as well.
Yeah, I'd like to just build up on Maria's question based on what Rashid has just been talking about. How can we also ensure that, number one, our students are able to benefit from the wisdom and knowledge that these artisans have, and also since there is a transformation that is required, an evolution that is required, what facilities can we provide to these artists and craftsmen in terms of ensuring that they're able to respond to a more kind of contemporary aesthetic, contemporary kind of language?
So I just want to quickly tell you a little story. When the Aga Khan University was conceived, the architect Bayat out of Boston always referred to Islamic architecture, historical Islamic architecture, and looked at all the embellishments on the wall, you know, whether it was marble or red sandstone. There's like a profusion of carving on it. And he said, I wonder why they carved every single square inch of surface. He could not understand that. But regardless, he was inspired by it, and he wanted to do the same for our university and hospital here in Karachi. So he devised a methodology by which the pigmentation on the concrete surface of the exterior walls was actually dripped. It's called weeping plaster. And if you allow me, I'll show you a very quick video of how this is actually done. And is this it? Yeah. Oh, sorry, this is not it. No, this is not it. But maybe the video is not coming up. But what it is actually a teapot used with pigmented plaster, and every single drip that you see on the surface of this facade is actually done by the strips. I don't know if you can see this picture of the university itself. Oh, we have, is it visible?
Yes, yes.
Right, so we have a 1.5 million square feet of building space. And there's consistency, and this weeping plaster is used everywhere that is actually, what it does is it creates a little shadow on the surface, and the tradition is drawn from carving on facades. It casts a shadow, which makes the wall cooler. It also, what it does is, can you see this image?
Yeah, yes, we can.
Yeah, so I don't know if you can see where he's got this, this trough with the 4 spouts coming out of it. And these drips are actually drips of plaster that are pigmented. And this was created 35 years ago. It was designed and it was done. And the same family to this day, I think 3 generations down, are still covering all the facades of the Aga Khan University in Karachi, which is a remarkable tradition. What it's done is it's modernized it. It's made it a sustainable way forward. And it's an art that the institution has tried to keep alive. It is exposed. We have demonstrations for students who come, and it has inspired many buildings in Pakistan since. So this is what I meant initially about the evolution of the craft of carving on surfaces, which is taken to another level, but it is alive. And I think it may spin off into something else. Who knows? 10 years down the road, we may end up having precast panels with drip plaster on it. But for now, it is alive, and it is a very effective way of covering surfaces.
Very interesting. So.
Kapil and Jayashree, would you also like to share some of the images of your work in relation to the arts and craft?
So, yeah, this image just shows the very, 2 different kind of materials. One is the mural art that happens in Kerala, and how the artist was called in, and subsequently they used their talent to kind of convert their sort of skill into an interior environment, which was completely different from the one that they were used to. They usually do more temple kind of architecture,
Right.
drawings and art. But this was, used with their kind of pigments, their natural pigments and natural color that they make and made on the walls. And juxtapositioning with that is this, each kapchi work is what they call it, where the stone is actually hammered and made into small pieces and then manually put onto these walls. So this again was a practice that was done, traditionally, but they wouldn't find any more clients for it, or it wasn't being used at all. So there were 2-3 families which came in and are still continuing to do it in mostly homes as a finish. So I thought that was interesting. And then on the right, the image shows the same kapchi work, which continuously we kind of try to use it in several projects where the same family gets more and more work. This is where artists from Shantiniketan, various artists were called in to adorn the walls of hotel rooms. So the hotel was what, 100 rooms?
160
yeah.
rooms.
So then, that's how these artists came in. This was another carpenter kind of person who only knew how to chisel out of hardwood. He couldn't do fine work. He would do only hardwood. So this is some collaborative panels that we did together, and then subsequently used them at various sites. This is just a finely crafted house. This is what, metal art.
Yeah, it's a sculpture. It's again made in Bengal, and believe it or not, this is an office. So it's a
bringing in the fine arts into
fine
spaces,
arts into.
This is again some fabric, use of fabric on the top. This is the searches that we go on. There's something interesting. So fast.
Sorry.
And so it doesn't have to be very fine crafted things that need to come into interior spaces. These pots are very humble. We found them at Dharavi and we just picked up 9 of them and put them into a plush apartment and created a very interesting look and also kind of a vocabulary for the artists. This was something which was done with light. Again, just something experimental. Different kinds of craft all put into an image here. And subsequently, the last slide is, of course, go ahead. This is the Mumbai International Airport, which today has got so many different forms of art and craft that have been put together. So I thought this would be an interesting slide to share, where a huge number of artisans have been brought in to really expose, show, and kind of bring in their creativity. And also to remind everybody, whoever goes through this airport every day, that there is, this huge vocabulary of artistic art, craft that exists, which can be drawn, into whenever required to create spaces. So this is a very huge and very interesting take on current craft and art, which we always admire. I'm sure you do whenever you come into Mumbai also.
I'd just like to say something about these slides. So in almost every hospitality project, we've had people, curators, help us identify young, talented artists and commission them. These 2 pieces of art that you're seeing are approximately around 6.5 feet square each. And they're made by young artists. And they've been encouraged to paint in various mediums. And we've seen their growth as artists over the last 2 decades. The one you're seeing on the right, in fact, both of them are about maybe a decade old. And it's great to see those artists now grow and evolve into some amount of fame and, keep to their style in what they've been doing. So I think that itself is in India, we've had that opportunity because there are a lot of, like Shantiniketan, which she was saying, there are schools of fine art. And there are a lot of people who are appreciative. There are a lot of patrons of art who encourage young artists, and we would take that opportunity and give them the walls to adorn with their fine art. They stay there for decades together. It's been a pretty good experience doing that. I think in almost every hotel project we would certainly commission, and we would even have master artists encourage the younger ones, guide them, and progress that way.
Thank you. Does the panel feel that the scale of the project or a particular architectural typology plays a role in whether you use arts and crafts or not? Is there any preferences? Are those factors important when we're looking at?
Light band hui hai.
Yeah, so I think the
Light
example of the Mumbai airport is perfect to answer this question. The scale of the Mumbai airport walls is phenomenal, and I feel that every time I go into Mumbai, I actually look forward to that walk from the aircraft on, towards the visa officers, now, the immigration officers. Each art is so gorgeous and so beautiful. And I think it's the scale of the airport that has given the artists that fantastic canvas to display. And I seriously feel Mumbai airport without that art would not be half as special at all. It's because of those lovely pieces. It defines what it is today, the airport. And therefore, I think that's a fantastic example, Jayashree, that you gave of how art takes architecture to a completely different level. Yeah, we really enjoy that walk.
Wonderful to see it at railway stations, at everything that is public, because there's so much of art.
It's also very important, if you notice at Bombay Airport, that how art, when thought about early in the planning process, has actually impacted the architecture. So they obviously at all airports is an arrival and a departure level. They're always at two different levels, but the art connects the two.
Yeah.
And I think that was very stunning. I'm not sure how many people it really appeals to, but when you have a palette of about maybe 9 meters, of a canvas in height, which connects two levels. I mean, there's a very deeper meaning in when you're arriving into a country and when you're departing from a country, and how the art is actually connecting both of them. So I think that interplay in architecture, I don't know whether it happened by chance or it was planned, but I think as architects, at least I've noticed it, that it's done very well, and I'm pretty sure it has impacted.
It gives the airport an identity. It gives its own identity. It's a memory that you take with you. And whenever you come to Mumbai airport, you know this is Mumbai, because the art is just stunning. It's breathtaking. It's a long walk to get to the immigration. Maybe it's a nice distraction from what you're about to face.
Especially for us.
But it's beautiful, really beautiful. And I think that answers Raza's question about the scale. I don't think scale in architecture and its connection to art really is size. Size does not matter when it comes to that. I think you could have a small project that is all about art and a very big one that is very beautifully done, like the Mumbai airport.
And on the other hand, the TV, the art that you showed with the TV panel, that was beautiful as well.
Yeah. This photograph is very interesting because you have this Indian wear in a very modern airport with the art. I mean, it just says so much.
Yeah, lovely picture.
So it is true. So it is true that travel and hospitality industry plays a huge role in disseminating and taking forward what all that we have been talking about the arts and crafts and architecture, and how, whether we contemporize it or whether we maintain it or we restore our heritage per se. So, so that means we really need to activate all these nexus, all these dots, and we need to get out of the circumstances that we are globally. We need to move around, we need to engage so that we kind of take the art, architecture and crafts to the next level with the direction of the designers. That's exactly what Rashid was trying to make a point as to how the hospitality industry will actually take this a notch forward, and why the Western spectrum of Europe seems to be so vibrant and so alive in their tangible and intangible heritage is just because of that, because they kind of spill it with abundance of people who admire and continuously keep admiring it. So it should be a thought for all of us designers to actually then push for the travel industry and the hospitality industry. What do you say, Rashid? Because you've been working on restaurants and hotels. Would you like to share certain thoughts on that, or even visuals?
Absolutely. So couple of experiments we did. I'll share some images. So 3 years ago, I started this personal project, which is different in a way that I did it as a developer and I didn't have any money. So I convinced my father and my cousin to buy a piece of land. And then slowly I invested in it, in building it. And then I asked a lot of craftspeople and people from the industry to invest in that house. So I wanted to make it sustainable, with water, with energy. So all our basically development projects, the largest in industry anywhere is housing, right? And a lot of things go into it. The only issue is that once a house is built, nobody really has access to it because family live in it.
आपने अभी किए WhatsApp? मुझे WhatsApp नहीं मिला अभी आपका.
Fawzia, your microphone is open. Sorry. Rashid, you can continue, please.
Rashid is muted.
Rashid, your mic is mute.
Yeah. Okay. So what I did was that I invited a lot of people from the industry to come in, and because there was no client, I was the client. So there was no restriction on design or what we put in or any time issue. So the deal was that people will put in their product, and once the house is sold, everybody gets paid. But there's no timeline. It could be 1 year, it could be 2 years, right? So I'll just have, I don't have too many images. I'll share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
So how do I share it?
You have to speak to it.
I have to speak to the screen?
You have to press the share screen button at the bottom panel.
I did.
A green thing with an arrow pointing up.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then it should prompt you to show a window. Yeah.
Okay, you're sharing now.
Okay. All right. So basically, I'm just giving you examples like this one. This is a facade screen. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's CNC metal. So it covers the whole facade of the house. It's illuminated from outside. So this illumination is actually from outside, right? So we tested metal. I am not able to get out of it. This is my, okay. And tested concrete. So this is not cast in concrete. This is a plastered wall with wood textured concrete, like the board concrete tested on it. So materiality, and these are custom made, the tiles. They're all handmade things, right? Then I will like to show you this image. So this is a local ceramic company called Kayas Tiles, right? So what we were talking about in terms of crafts, that when it evolves, you can modernize it, you can make it more contemporary. What I've done with this project also is that all the vendors can bring in their prospective clients, and the house is open to them. So if somebody made any windows, we localized, we got sections from abroad, we extruded them locally, cost went down 50%. So they can bring in their clients, and they can get more work out of that, because if you do something which is different from the norm, and then people don't have access to, how would they know that this is also a possibility? Because not always a visual. Visual to Pinterest pe bhi hota hai. Okay. So so we tried these ceramic tiles. Then for a house, we tried this two-layered metal screen. So this is made by like a roadside metal worker, but it's 20 feet this way and 16 feet this way, and there are 2,000 bolts keeping these screens together. So again, this guy made a pretty decent profit out of it and got more work because people had access to it. Okay. This image is of a building we've just finished. It's an apartment building, but it's in an old late 1950s, early 1960s neighborhood. So all the houses around are Art Deco. So instead of making something very contemporary, we intentionally took it towards a more contemporary Art Deco. In the process, we photographed and sketched all the Art Deco buildings from Lahore, from Shalom Market, from the Mall Road, and then we incorporated those elements. So this is Art Deco very much so from Lahore. So all the elements are from within this city, although maybe slightly exaggerated and all that. And then the training on ground for the contractors, for our own people, the integration and all, that taught us how difficult it must be for the people to do it then. So this is maybe a day view of the same, right? I talked about finding elements from our own culture. So this is from a retail store we designed. We've done about 6-7 shops. It's called Generation. And this image is from one of our trips to the north. And in Pakistan and India, you know, these gates in the houses, they have these little metal things, and they put metal sheets behind it, and they paint it nice colors. So a lot of these metal screens are all over Pakistan and India and Bangladesh, and they have such phenomenal sort of designs in them. So we choose to use it differently in every shop. So 2 of them will get this, the new one will get another design, but it will be from our local vocabulary. So the last image I want to show is this one. So this is a very contemporary house, but this is done by somebody who's not so educated, but mechanized his factory over the last 10-15 years. We started, when he came to us, he was on a scooter, okay? And it's one of the most mechanized and advanced factories, woodworking factories. So from the from the engineered doors to the veneering to these prefabricated ceilings that just click in together, it's something that the travels of his children to Dubai and China and to other places, and the ability to research on the computers has given that edge to this gentleman who's worked with his hands for about 40 years. So I think exposing what you do to, we talked about scale, but if we allow more people to see it visually, these are lamps made in Lahore from the 1920s. They're railway lamps that I again collect. And for a show, Raza was part of it, architecture show. I converted this to a bench, which is inspired by these railway sleepers with a little bit of brass. It has brass detailing. So this piece a friend bought, but we keep on creating things whenever there is an opportunity on available. But I still think that it just boils down to whether people have access to, when you make handcrafted things or exposure, or they can touch it, or they can physically see it, and it only happens in public projects. But if you want to do it on residential projects, then you have to do it a bit differently. You have to involve the craftspeople in the project so they can also profit out of it. So the next project is that every crafts company is an investor and they get a profit out of it, other than the work they do. That's one way of keeping the craft alive also, that they are players within the same scheme.
Thank you, Rashid. I also have a question for you from the audience. Do you find skilled contractors that you're comfortable with? Is it easy to find skilled contractors?
No, you have to develop them over years, and you have to keep them, keep giving them work, and keep your expectations very high. I just think that we as a nation, we don't define things. We have a trust deficit and we don't define our expectations. So if you define expectations, you can, if you identify good contractors, you can develop them and also give a referral so that they grow as companies when they work with other architects and interior designers also. It's very difficult to get very skilled contractors.
So what platforms can we provide to find, to create linkages, let's say, between designers and craftsmen and artisans?
I think there is something we are working on, because if you don't teach this at a grassroots level to a student, so whenever I go for a jury, there are a lot of projects which are totally West inspired, and when I sort of tell them that, you know, what is this? Did people sort of just vanish from Pakistan and India and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka? And it says there's not much available for us to be inspired by, or nobody uploads their drawings, the buildings are not documented, the plans are not available, the details are not available. So one thing trying to do is to at least make our built projects and details and lists of categorized craftspeople, that, you know, this is category A, this is category B, this is category C, and make it available to other people also, that when you work with somebody and you know they are top end, then other people should have access to it. And it shouldn't be so difficult, and we shouldn't sort of worry so much that somebody's going to steal our contacts or our drawings or our whatever, because I think the world is much opened up. You can get pretty much everything, and we are way behind in terms of our systems and how we give access to our younger generation. Because in the end, we all have what, not Raza, but the rest of us have maybe 15 good years in us. So I think this transfer of knowledge is very, very important, because otherwise you will see a lot of mediocrity around you in your old age.
And thank you.
I'm just wondering, Rashid, if there's not a role for the government to play in this. You know, our crafts are so precious, and we have this long tradition of them. I think that if the architectural institution and interior design institutions appeal to the government and instate some kind of system whereby these arts are actually promoted, I think that that would go a long way in nurturing the local arts and keeping that connection that you talked about between art and architecture.
My thoughts exactly, because I think the institutes, organizations, and connect with the government in the right sector has to be built in to actually promote or educate or inculcate the artisans fraternity and whatever art, you know, or crafts that is actually diminishing or dying, at least recorded in some way. And there are a host of institutes that are actually working on it. I mean, the AKCSP programs in the Lahore area, I mean, is wonderful work and example for all of us that can be taken to different parts of the country. But yes, a proper dissemination of knowledge, archival system has to be integrated somewhere with the organizations, institutes, educational bodies, academia, for us to have actually maintained an archive and then move forward whichever way, you know, we take the arts and crafts in this contemporary times. So that nexus has to be built in, the sooner the better. What would you say on that score from India, Kapil, about these linkages?
So I think that I mean, we've been in business long enough, and I think the core is opportunity. And I think that we, all of us on this group, and so many thousands more, who are able to create that opportunity sensibly to encourage skilled individuals and artists, artisans and workers, it becomes our responsibility to, when we have the opportunity, to be able to encourage, you know, individuals, and we have the access to it. And since we have the access and the opportunity, I think that we should, on a very large palette, encourage all the skilled workers. I don't see, there are a few trades in India which I see are in difficult times. Let's say carpet makers. I mean, they're traditional carpet makers, and when you have the ability to be able to order off a catalog, you know, so it makes it very easy. Time constraint is an issue. The material used is obviously natural, which is used, you know, by the local carpet makers. I'm just giving you one example. So we make a very distinct effort that though technically speaking, specifications are written, let's say for a banquet or whatever, that you need high abrasion, low maintenance sort of fabrics or fiber used in carpets, we would still encourage the local artisans wherever it's available. And I think since all of us have that opportunity of access and then passing on that opportunity, if we open our eyes and are sensible, I think that plays an important role. All of us architects and all of us designers who have that opportunity should certainly, in a very open-eyed manner, pass and think about it.
Yeah, but the inherent problem with the whole situation that we all are in this subcontinent is that art has not been taught at the basic level in school. Our art and crafts are not at all given any kind of exposure or importance, or they're not even a subject unless it's an optional subject. So unless it is introduced at all levels equally, whether the students are going to school in a municipal area or in a very elite area, the arts and crafts have remained unaddressed. It's our complete educational system which is going towards this very different kind of occupation building. I don't see the satisfaction in all the students there also. It is, so there is definitely a very skewed thinking that is going on, and I'm not able to put my finger on it, but I think that it needs to be addressed at a very young age, where children who are, say, artisans, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, children need to learn at least a little bit of art when they're growing up.
Just this morning, gone out for a drive. It was raining very heavily, and we drove by a building which must be about a century old, a stone building in central Bombay. And we were noticing the stone, 100-year-old stone used, ochre colored stone, and the way it was built, with nowhere close to the kind of technology that would be available to a youngster today to do similar stone work. They would use framework and steel and breathable systems and things like that. I didn't see a single moss mark on it. There is obviously no protective layer on the stone. It's the same stone that you would get today to be able to use if you wanted to apply, let's say, a stone on any other architectural facade. So I think that technology shouldn't override a traditional art form or the use of natural materials in a manner where it really waters it down, that it just doesn't perform as well. I mean, there's a distinct difference just in the application. I mean, for a moment, forget about what Samir was saying, in terms of the treatment of the stone, and the detail on that stone is a separate topic per se. But I think that is very important to, like Jayashree is saying, to inculcate this education at an early level and make it, I think, compulsive, so that everybody has that sensitivity at an early age to be able to address it when they grow up.
Everybody has access to our inheritance. All of us have grown with art and craft in our DNA, but it's not evident in school. And even going away from architecture schools, there are no longer any workshops like you mentioned.
Yeah, so it's not just the education that we're talking about of art. It's also the appreciation of the art and how sensorial and tactile aspect of art actually is a part of the psychological interiors that we build in, how it actually impregnates the interiors, So yes, I mean, the debate then goes on to the education and what all that you have been exposed to. But yes, you are right that conscious effort is required to build up the appreciation of art and skill labor and of the intangible aspects of heritage that we are fast losing, So that takes us to the education spectrum altogether and to another debate. But I'm sure Raza has further questions for you guys.
I think we're reaching the end of our time. So I'd open the floor to any final comments that the panelists might have.
I'd just like to add to what Kapil said about the opportunity. I think that's very imperative, that our artists feel needed and they feel that they are not redundant and they are constantly busy. And the people who can keep them that way is really us. So the onus is on us. And I think one of the things, one of my observations, recent observations, is that if you take a very traditional art form and put it across to the younger people who somehow have lost that connection with traditional arts. Like if you just take Ajrak, for example, unless they actually take a trip to the interior of Sindh, they are not really exposed to that fabric anymore. The process of it and the labor of love that is really required to make that fabric. Now, just to give you a short example, a person like Noorjahan Bilgrami has taken that art form, an ancient art form, and has put it out there in a modern contextual way, whereby the cuts of her outfits are something which a young person would love to wear. And that's what I think is required, to take that art form, not mess with it or modernize it to an extent that it loses its personality, but to take it and make it acceptable and available, I think, and keep those artists busy. I think that is the only way that they will survive.
I would like to add something that, my nicest meetings are when doctors come in for their projects, and I write like a prescription that they write for us, like in their bad handwriting, right? So I just figured out that, for what we do, like you go to a doctor and, it's 3,000 rupees for 5 minutes that they take upfront. And with us, people use their entire life savings or their entire company budgets to make a project or something like that. And so we are definitely undervalued as people who can maybe knock off $1 billion here or there by just some wrong decisions. I think two major sort of directions. One is that I think we as professionals don't clarify to our clients what we do. So what I've started doing is that in the last project that I showed you, I made a conscious effort to list down each and every thing that goes into a building, from the lock to the thingy, and then translate its cost to a rupee value. Like maybe a door handle is 4 rupees as an overall impact on the building. So if you want to do something really nice, just spend another 4, right? So if your stone cladding is, the whole impact is 30 rupees, and somebody's saying, no, stone cladding is really expensive. And you say, no, it is not. It's just another 40 rupees. When you're spending 7,000 in any case, 40 is nothing, but your value that it brings to the building will change. So I think this information, with the permission of the clients, I share with whoever is going to build the next building that, dude, this is going to cost you this much. And please don't try to save money on the real things that matter. Again, with better passive design or with insulation, I think a lot of extra load for air conditioning and the budgets that go into air conditioning and lighting and positive air systems, that can be reduced. That goes into the longevity of a building. So I think while we try to educate our children and our students and whatever, I think the primary education is with our clients and ourselves also, that sometimes people don't understand things between lines. If you give somebody a printout and say, okay, these are the services, tick, 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 it'll go over their heads. So if you write down it like a essay form that I will do this for you, this will save this much money, please put this in the real things that matter. And I think also when we start a project and we take on a project, we should consciously tell our client that this is what we do, this is what we would like to do. If you are averse to this, maybe we do not want to take you up as a client also. I started doing it this year, that if it's something which is totally north of what we do, I politely refuse, even if we are dying as a company to take on that project. I think that refusal also matters, because you don't want to spend the next 2 years doing something that you do not want to do or doesn't add value. So I think that from my end, that if this is to be done, then things have to be defined, that which cookies go into which boxes.
Thank you, Rashid. Kapil and Jayashree, would you like to add something?
Very interesting insight into everything. I think, really enjoyed your perspective, Rashid, and Naheed and Samir. I think art and craft is a very, very important part of the visual communication and the interior space and the storytelling that we do. And it has infinite kind of possibilities vis-a-vis the finite possibilities which come with technical, stuff. So yes, for sure, it's a big hands up for arts and crafts.
I second that.
Thank you, guys. I'm going to thank all the panelists. This has been a most insightful conversation. We have limited time. I'm just going to pass this on to Maria for her concluding remarks.
Well, thank you all. You've been great speakers, and we have all behaved very well, contrary to our demo, wherein we were having a blast. So we've been very, let's put it, under the influence of the thunder and the rain. We've been very poker and not been thinking about chai and pakoras and dwelling on those. But I think the discourse has actually opened up at very various levels that we have touched on today. And we will continue to explore those nuances, be it the preservation, be it the evolution of arts and crafts, and be it with the connects with the academia and the government. So I foresee a huge array of webinars coming up, wherein we'll be taking up these themes further into our discussions and pulling different designers and architects and of course academia also, because I believe since there's been so much of talk of sensitizing the students and the education spectrum as well. So yes, thank you once again from across the border for sharing such beautiful thoughts and beautiful interiors with us. Samir and Naheed, always, and Rashid for your fantastic oivas into various projects. Raza for your impeccable moderation and holding the show, and to the brilliant audience that has joined us from different parts of the world. Stay tuned. We will be bringing in more. And thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great weekend ahead, all of you.
Thank you very much.
And the pouring rain. Yes.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
You guys.